All right. Good morning, everyone. I'm Michelle Sauvé. This is David Berlin. We're part of the ANA Grant Application Template team. A little bit more about ANA. Our purpose is to promote the goal of economic and social self-sufficiency for Native Americans. One of the ways that we do this is through our competitive discretionary grants. Our grants are advertised through our funding opportunity announcements, FOAs. These are the rules, regulations, and application instructions, a manual. This structure of the FOA is required to be the same throughout the federal government, but they're not exactly user-friendly. This is a concern for us at ANA because we can't truly achieve our purpose if we can't assist the most struggling communities. So let me tell you about one of those struggling communities we had the opportunity to interview. We wanted to find someone who attended our pre-application training but then didn't apply. So we found Deanna John. She works for a small nonprofit in a rural village in Alaska. She's applied 5 times before, but she's never been funded. Some years they've chosen not to apply because it's so time-consuming and overwhelming. They just have a staff of 5 with no dedicated grant writer. She described her experience of what it's like to apply like this. We feel we really just can't compete. The way the information is structured in the FOA is confusing. It's not always clear what to do, which parts we need to respond to, and which parts are just for our information. In the end, it's just overwhelming trying to make sense of everything between the different sections. We heard this a lot in our applicant interviews. They feel overwhelmed, just like Diana, and the whole of the FOA at 54 pages is overwhelming. When you sit down to write, it's difficult to know how to structure it so it will score well. As you can see, it's very dense, and if you take a look at it, it has a lot of instructions, but then you don't get to what you need to write for need for assistance until page 19. It's in a completely different section, pages later, page 34, where you see how the reviewers are going to score you. That's the crux of the disconnect for those that are writing their applications because they're not sure how to structure it. We looked at over 40 applications and we found they're structuring it in different ways. Some for the instructions, some to the evaluation criteria, some try to do a hybrid. It's kind of all over the place. We found additional problems. I mentioned we can't change the FOA, and that's a key problem. We also found that we have many applications that get screened out. They get submitted, they're on time, but for a technical reason, such as exceeding the funding amount we're allowed to provide, we can't review their application. So imagine spending a month or more on your application and it doesn't even get read. With these challenges in mind, how do we make it easier? Our solution is to build a grant application template. We see it like this. The FOA is the US tax code, and our ANA template is like TurboTax. So here's what it's going to look like, and it has built-in functionality. There's a cover page, and you can see what some of it's going to do. Here's an example of some of that functionality. If you try to enter in an amount that's over our ceiling, you'll get an error message. So you'll be prevented from making some of those technical mistakes that keep you from entering the competition in the first place. Now here's the real assistance we're providing for the writer. As I mentioned before, you're flipping back and forth trying to figure out how to structure everything. You can see right there the part in the FOA that has the instructions for what to write is at the top in the paragraph. The numbered bullet points, that's the review criteria that evaluators will score you with. Right below it, a text box. This is the part that the FOA does not allow us to bring together. Our template, we can bring it together. That way you're not flipping back and forth, and using our template takes the guesswork how to organize your application. Lastly, when you complete the cover page, it determines the checklist on the back page. And in the FOA, every possible form you might possibly need is in there, everything in the kitchen sink. However, with our smart form, you're only going to see a checklist of what if you're a nonprofit, you get, send in your proof of nonprofit status. Everything you need and nothing that you don't. This is going to save you time, and you're going to be less likely to miss a required form. So in the end, the template is going to address many of the main challenges we found from our applicant interviews, especially the concern about how to structure the application. It also addresses some of the issues we found were preventing applicants from being reviewed in the first place, such as the issue with asking for more than our award ceiling. We identified some additional benefits for ANA, and we're excited to explore those further, especially the ability to easily access and aggregate the application data. We demoed the template for several applicants, and the feedback we received was overwhelmingly positive. They could immediately see the benefit. It sounds as though the challenges applicants face are fairly common across government agencies. For this reason, we think a template like this has great potential for replication beyond ANA. So these are our next steps we need to complete before we pilot it. And I'm out of time, so thank you. And David is going to field our questions.
Actually, I would like, I'll yield some of my time for you to go through this because I think this is important. Would you mind taking us through some of the next steps?
Yeah, sure. So I think now that we know that it's possible, we've had a lot of internal as well as our applicant interviews. We talked to folks in grants policy and grants.gov, making sure that this could actually happen. And so we need to do more feedback internal, get everything that we need, and take out anything extraneous that we don't need on our form so it really is clean and user-friendly. Then implement final content revisions. We know we have to get OMB approval. That takes time. And then build the PDF with the functionality we need it to have to solve some of those screen-out problems, test the functionality, and then pilot it. And we're being very ambitious, and trying to get this done by December, so that way when our applications go live then, this is ready and can be pilot tested in one of our grant applications.
So this is, I mean, if I'm understanding correctly, this is something that would be, it seems to me, incredibly valuable across the entire federal government.
We truly hope so.
Right. I mean, the FOAs, like you said, are the same across everywhere. So one thought is that this might be an interesting project for a unit like 18F to take up as, so instead of you guys sort of like hiring a consultant or something to build the to build the additional form, maybe 18F at GSA could be brought in, and there are sort of new legions of designers and developers and stuff to actually think about a interesting way of constructing this that would work across the government as opposed to just in one entity. Just a thought, but that could be an interesting way to go forward.
Yeah, that's a great point, Brian. I was going to say the same, like, please don't go build something just for you guys, right? I think you have this great ability to understand how to prompt the users what they need. You kind of put some of that in that screenshot. But technically, how you implement this, this is a very common problem where people collect data and score it for all sorts of things. You mentioned TurboTax, but in almost every sector you have this when you're getting a mortgage or everything. There's a lot of online tools that you can design forms and kind of get people started. So focus on like understanding your market and what they need and making sure that you have your wording and everything right and the rules right, but not go building technology for this. Oh,
yeah, and that's where the funding, we've talked to both like internal and external, and at this point I think it's more of a time issue as long as we would like to work internal to the government if they can meet the timeline so that we can test it. But given we don't have the tech background, are not planning to build it. We're going to use experts for that.
Yeah, to your point about replication, we talked with the forms director at grants.gov, and he seemed to be, he definitely seemed to support it and said it was feasible, and he seemed to be intrigued by the idea in terms of replication for other offices as well. So that's definitely something we're excited about the potential of.
So in your presentation, you've focused on the person writing the grant as the user, as the key user. And you did mention towards the end that there are benefits to the persons reviewing the forms as well. I'm wondering if you could, flip the focus from, the person writing the grant being the user to more so towards the persons reviewing the grant, and sort of make a more a quantitative case for what efficiency improvements you might actually see. So that might help you sell it more internally. And I'm wondering if you've considered that.
Yeah, we have, and it's a great point. I think there's a lot of potential. I mean, we did this undertaking to really better serve our applicant communities, but it's true that provide a uniform structure like this where, could we go back to is it slide 10? Where the evaluation criteria that a reviewer would use to score the content that's right beneath it, we think would really make the panel review process a lot more efficient and effective. And, as opposed to the status quo, because as a byproduct of all applicants essentially structuring it differently, some one way, some the other, others do a hybrid. If you're a reviewer, you have the criteria in one hand and you're basically just hunting for the relevant information. And, yeah, we're definitely excited about the back-end functionality with regard to that as well. So, yeah, it's a great point.
All right, we are out of time for you guys. I just want to say anything that fixes bureaucracy makes me so happy. I just love that. Right. So, good work, guys. Thank you.